The story begins with John waiting at a railway station with his brother Peter, excited to see his wife return after years apart. Soon, Peter's wife Marie and their son Creston step off the train. John happily welcomes them and the family heads home. Peter tells them he has some business in the city and will catch up with them later. But their journey takes a dangerous turn when the carriage owner suddenly arrives and claims there has been a mistake. He orders the couple already sitting inside to get out, then replaces them with two recently released criminals, Paul Delarue and his partner Lester. John immediately senses trouble, but he stays quiet, hoping they'll be safe once they reach the next town. As evening falls, Paul gets drunk and starts harassing Marie. When she refuses his alcohol, he mocks her and forces her to take a sip, claiming it's their tradition. Then things get worse. Paul makes an inappropriate move toward Marie, and John warns him to stay away. But before John can react, Lester points a gun at him. Paul grabs Marie and begins assaulting her. John secretly tells Marie in Danish to bite Paul's ear. She does. John instantly uses the distraction to snatch Lester's gun. He grabs control of the situation and tells Creston to pick up the other weapon. But before Creston can reach it, Lester grabs him and holds a knife to his throat. Lester threatens to kill the entire family unless John gets out. With no choice, John is thrown from the carriage, leaving Marie and Creston trapped with the two criminals. John tries to chase after them, but he can't keep up. When he finally reaches the house, he finds Creston's lifeless body lying on the road. Completely devastated, John carries his son's body on his shoulders and continues searching for Marie. A little farther ahead, he discovers two more bodies, including the coachman. John grabs the coachman's gun and quickly catches up with Lester. He shoots him dead. Paul runs into the woods, desperately trying to escape, but John tracks him down. Paul begs for his life, claiming he never touched Marie, but John shows him no mercy and kills him. Then John opens the carriage and discovers Marie's body inside. She had been brutally assaulted and murdered. The next morning, Peter arrives at John's house. Seeing unfamiliar horses outside, he becomes suspicious and carefully enters. Inside, he finds John sitting beside the bodies of Marie and Creston, completely broken. Peter asks who did this. John simply tells him, "I had never seen them before. They were strangers." With nothing left to say, the two brothers embrace and cry together. John had come to this new land hoping to build a life with his family. Now everything he had come for was gone. Meanwhile, Henry Delarue arrives in town with his men after hearing that his brother has been killed. Known for his cruelty, Henry immediately confronts the mayor. The mayor tries to assure him that no one in town was responsible for the murders. Henry then asks the question that terrifies everyone. "Where's my brother?" The mayor and sheriff exchange nervous looks. Henry still doesn't know that Paul is one of the two dead men. When Henry finally learns the truth, he explodes with rage. He demands that the sheriff find his brother's killer. The sheriff admits they have no evidence and no witnesses. Henry gives him 2 hours to find the murderer. The sheriff says that's impossible. Henry changes the deadline to morning, but demands 2 townspeople as payment for his brother's death. He orders the mayor to choose them. If the mayor can't provide 2 victims, Henry promises to kill 4. Terrified, the mayor chooses an elderly woman and a disabled man. He promises the woman that after her death, he'll look after her grandson, Dan, and help him run the family store. But Henry shows no mercy. In front of the entire town, he executes both of them. Then, just to make his point clear, he shoots 2 more townspeople. Henry warns the town that until his brother's killer is found, their monthly protection payment will increase from $80 to $160. Nobody dares to resist. That evening, the town buries Paul. At the cemetery, Henry approaches Paul's wife, Madeline, and promises to find the man responsible and kill him himself. He tells her he'll protect her, and together, they'll rule the town. But instead of comforting her, Henry's words only fuel Madeline's anger. She tells him to stay quiet and leave her alone. Henry says nothing and walks away. At the same time, John and Peter bury Marie and Creston. Devastated and consumed by anger, the brothers decide to leave town and head west. The next day, they return to town, where their incredible shooting skills quickly attract attention. The woman who had met John at the station becomes suspicious that they may have been responsible for Paul's death, so she immediately alerts the sheriff. Peter then visits Dan at the hotel and asks about his grandmother. Dan tells him that Henry killed her, and he is now running the store himself. Peter tells Dan that he and John are heading west and offers to sell him some animal skins. Dan immediately realizes these men could be the ones who killed Paul. He asks if they know how to handle guns. Peter admits they do. Dan tells them the town desperately needs men like them to stand against Henry, but Peter refuses, explaining that when he was a soldier, he learned one important lesson: never fight a battle you know you can't win. Meanwhile, John tries to sell his land to the mayor. The mayor can only offer him $150 because Henry's new taxes and growing violence have destroyed property values. He advises John to wait until Henry finds his brother's killer. Once the threat is gone, land prices might recover. John asks who the killer is. The mayor explains that Henry's brother was murdered after being released from prison. John suddenly realizes the truth. The man he killed was Paul Henry. Not wanting to attract attention, John accepts the low offer, sells the land, and hides the money inside his boots. Meanwhile, Henry is negotiating with businessmen from Standard Atlantic, a major oil company. They remind him that the company needs to appear civilized. His military-style brutality is bad for business, and they want him to change his methods. methods. Then they ask how long it will take him to drive the townspeople off their land. Henry confidently says he can clear the entire area within 3 weeks, as long as they let him work his way. The businessmen agree and leave. Meanwhile, John and Peter are about to leave town when armed townspeople surround them and take them prisoner. John begs the sheriff to release Peter, insisting that his brother wasn't involved, but the sheriff refuses. Peter had broken a deputy marshal's jaw, so he has to face the consequences. The sheriff admits that he has already informed Henry's men. He explains that Henry wasn't always this cruel. After the war, something changed, and now the sheriff is forced to work with him just to keep some order in town. He even tells John that if he had shown mercy and spared Paul that night, all 4 members of his family might still be alive. Soon, Henry's men arrive and drag John away from the station. One of them asks John which side he fought for during the war. John simply answers, the Germans. The man immediately punches him hard. John is taken to Henry's compound, tied up, and hung outside the house under the blazing sun, left there to suffer. Henry brings Madeline to John and tells her, "This is the man who killed your husband." John immediately explains that Paul raped his wife and brutally murdered his son, so he deserved what happened. Henry doesn't want to hear another word. He punches John and tells him they'll soon find out what he's really made of. He leaves John tied up under the scorching sun without food or water, intending to let him die slowly. As the hours pass, John grows weaker and vultures begin circling overhead. That afternoon, the mayor arrives at Henry's house. At first, it looks like he might be there to help John, but then the truth comes out. The mayor casually asks Henry if he can take John's boots. Henry agrees. The mayor steals the boots and the money hidden inside them, while warning John that he won't survive much longer. It becomes clear that the mayor and Henry have a secret alliance. Meanwhile, Peter is still locked up. When the sheriff leaves for church, Peter sees his chance. He deliberately provokes the deputy marshal, insulting his appearance until the man loses his temper and comes at him. Peter quickly overpowers him, knocks him down, and escapes from the jail. That night, Henry shows his true intentions toward Madeline. Instead of mourning his brother, he treats her as someone he can control. He assaults her and tells her he has wanted her for a long time. Then Henry promises to give her a new life once everything is over, even claiming he will make her the Queen of New Orleans. Madeline's silence and injuries reveal exactly what she has been forced to endure. Soon, a heavy storm hits. Peter returns to Henry's compound to rescue John. John is barely conscious, weakened by hunger, thirst, and the cold rain. Peter hides behind a wall while 2 guards watch over him. When one guard goes inside for water, Peter takes his chance. He spots Madeline nearby, her eyes filled with anger and defiance. When the second guard comes to check on them, he discovers the first guard dead. Before he can react, Peter attacks and kills him. Madeline witnesses everything through the window, but she stays silent. Her silence makes it clear that she no longer wants to live under Henry's control. Peter quickly reaches John, cuts his ropes, and frees him. On their way out, he takes down 2 more guards at the gate. The gunshots alert Henry, who fires at Peter, but Peter manages to escape with John. Henry and his men immediately mount their horses and chase after them. As the brothers race west, John becomes too weak to hold the reins and falls from his horse. Peter quickly pulls him onto his own horse and carries him to a rocky hiding place. He lays John down and hands him his gun. "Stay here, I'll be back." Peter then rides away, deliberately drawing Henry and his men away from John's hiding spot, even if it means putting his own life at risk. The next morning, John wakes up completely dehydrated. Desperate for water, he stumbles toward a small ditch and drinks the filthy water inside. Then, he hears horses. John grabs his gun and hides behind a rock. But when he looks up, he sees Peter's bloodied body lying nearby. Henry has killed his brother. The sight fills John with rage, and he swears to get revenge. Later that afternoon, Henry returns home and discovers that all his men have been killed. Worse, Madeline has stolen the fortune he made from the oil business and escaped. Madeline reaches the train station with a bag full of money and hides in a third-class carriage. As the train starts moving, she finally believes she's escaped. But her relief doesn't last. Through the window, she sees Henry's men chasing the train. They manage to stop it and capture her. Back at the compound, Henry slaps Madeline and accuses her of betrayal. He says his brother saved her from outlaws, yet she still turned against him. One of Henry's men suggests keeping Madeline alive for their own purposes instead of killing her immediately. Henry agrees and orders them to deal with her that night. Meanwhile, John wanders across the barren land, desperately searching for water. He eventually reaches Miss Whistler's home. She immediately points a gun at him and fires a warning shot. John drops his weapon and tries to draw water from a nearby well, but it's completely dry. Seeing how weak he is, Whistler takes pity on him. She brings John inside and gives him food and water. She then reveals that Henry killed her husband and warns John that neither of them has a future here. She urges him to leave with her before Henry finds him, but John refuses. He still has one thing left to do: avenge his family and his brother. That night, John storms into the mayor's house with a gun and demands his boots and stolen money back. Terrified, the mayor gives them to him. John then asks why the mayor had called Henry by his real name when everyone else was too afraid to even mention it. The mayor tries to lie, but John keeps pressing until he finally confesses. He was secretly working for Henry. The mayor had been buying up the townspeople's land and handing it over to Henry, helping him take control of the entire area. He begs John for mercy, claiming he was only trying to make a living. John doesn't buy it. He locks the mayor inside a coffin the man had prepared himself and leaves him there. John then heads to Dan's store and asks for revolvers, knives, and bottles of kerosene. town. He tells Dan to inform the sheriff that the mayor betrayed the town. The land he claimed to own was actually being sold to Henry. Henry believes the oil beneath the land is worth millions, which is why he's terrorizing the townspeople and forcing them off their property. Dan wants to join John in the fight, but John refuses. "My brother is dead and you're still a kid. I can't take you with me." John loads his gun and walks away alone, preparing for the final showdown. The next morning, John sends the mayor's body to Henry's compound inside a coffin, setting the final plan into motion. When Henry opens it, he finds the mayor's corpse and coldly orders his men to burn it. That's when Dan starts the attack. He sets part of the compound on fire and opens fire, creating chaos. Two of Henry's men rush toward the flames, but John is waiting for them and takes them out one by one. Realizing they're under attack, Henry and his remaining men grab their weapons and start searching for the intruders. Meanwhile, Dan climbs onto the roof and shoots another man, but one of Henry's men tracks him down and follows him into Madeline's bedroom. The man shoots Dan dead. Dan's death causes the kerosene above them to spill onto a burning cigarette, setting the attacker on fire. Another man nearby shoots him to put him out of his misery. John emerges from beneath the compound and discovers Dan's body. Then he spots Henry's man holding Madeline hostage. Using her as a shield, the man tries to escape across the roof. John takes a precise shot at his legs, sending him crashing down. Another gunman manages to hit John, but John still fights back. When the attacker gets close, John suddenly attacks him with a knife before finishing him with a gunshot. But as John steps outside, Henry finally spots him. He shoots John from behind. John is badly wounded and collapses to the ground. Henry walks toward the wounded John and mocks him for killing all his men. He raises his gun to finish him, but before he can pull the trigger, Madeline appears and shoots Henry. John uses the opening to get back on his feet and fires the final shot, killing Henry. With Henry finally dead, John and Madeline immediately point their guns at each other. For a moment, neither moves. They had both lost almost everything because of the same man. Slowly, they lower their weapons. Soon, the sheriff arrives with his men. He thanks John for freeing the town, admitting that they had spent years hoping someone like him would finally stand up to Henry. But when the sheriff sees Madeline alive, his expression changes. He warns John that taking her with him isn't right. John simply tells him that Madeline is coming with him and asks the sheriff to return to town. The sheriff owes John for saving the town, so he accepts and leaves. With Henry's reign finally over, John and Madeline prepare their horses and ride west together. And with that, their story comes to an end. What would you have done in John's place? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more movie recaps.